What if I told you that D-Day, the greatest invasion in history, succeeded because of a lie? And what if Hitler had figured it out? What if he'd ignored the fake army, ignored Patton, and sent everything he had to Normandy? Stick with me, because I'm about to show you how close we came to the Allies losing World War II, and how one man's paranoia almost saved Nazi Germany. June 6, 1944. 5:30 a.m. Normandy beaches. 156,000 Allied soldiers are crossing the English Channel. The largest armada ever assembled. 5,000 ships. 11,000 aircraft. Everything the Allies have. And waiting for them on the beaches? About 50,000 German soldiers. Undermanned. Undersupplied. Because Hitler's kept his best troops 200 miles away at Calais, waiting for Patton's fake army. But here's the terrifying question nobody wants to ask. What if Hitler hadn't fallen for it? What if he'd sent everything to Normandy instead? Let me paint you the nightmare scenario, because it's closer to reality than you think. Imagine it's June 5, 1944, the day before D-Day. Hitler's at his headquarters, the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia. He's looking at intelligence reports about this massive Allied army in southeast England under Patton's command. But instead of believing it, something clicks in his paranoid brain. He thinks, wait, this is too obvious. Patton's too visible. The radio traffic is too perfect. This is a trap. He calls Field Marshal Rommel, commander of Army Group B defending France. Says, forget Calais. Move everything to Normandy. Now, what happens next changes everything. Suddenly, instead of 50,000 Germans at Normandy, there are 200,000. Instead of a few dozen tanks, there are 500 panzers dug into positions overlooking the beaches. Instead of scattered resistance, there's a coordinated defense by Germany's best divisions. June 6. Dawn. The invasion begins exactly as it did in our timeline. Paratroopers drop behind enemy lines. But this time, they're not facing confused, scattered defenders. They're facing elite SS Panzer divisions that are already in position, already waiting. The paratroopers get massacred. Within hours, entire airborne divisions are wiped out or captured. Then the beach landings begin. And this is where it becomes hell. Omaha Beach in our timeline was already a bloodbath. 2,000 American casualties. Men pinned down, unable to advance. It almost failed with light German defenses. Now imagine Omaha with 4 times as many Germans. With pre-sighted artillery that's been zeroed in on every landing zone for weeks. With panzer tanks positioned on the bluffs, firing down at the landing craft. The first wave hits the beach. They don't make it 10 yards. Machine gun fire so intense it's like a solid wall. Men falling before they even get out of the boats. Second wave. Same thing. Bodies piling up in the surf. The water turning red. Bradley, watching from offshore, faces the same decision. But this time, pushing forward isn't an option. There is no forward. His men are being slaughtered wholesale. By noon, Omaha Beach is lost. The Americans evacuate what's left of the force. Over 10,000 casualties in 6 hours. Utah Beach, Sword Beach, Juno Beach. Same story. Heavier resistance. More casualties. Some beaches secured, but barely. And without Omaha, there's a massive gap in the Allied line. By nightfall of June 6, instead of a successful invasion with secure beachheads, the Allies have a disaster. They've got a few narrow footholds, completely isolated from each other. No way to link up. No way to push inland. And Hitler's panzer divisions? They're already counterattacking. Rommel, who in our timeline was caught away from the front, is now directing the defense personally. He throws his armor at the isolated Allied positions. June 7th. The panzers hit the British and Canadian sectors. Without Omaha secured, the Allies can't reinforce fast enough. The Germans push the British back to the beaches. Surrounded them. It becomes another Dunkirk. Emergency evacuation. Thousands of soldiers trapped, trying to get back to the ships while German artillery pounds them. By June 10th, 4 days after D-Day, the Allies have been thrown back into the sea. The invasion has failed. Completely. Churchill is devastated. Roosevelt is facing a political catastrophe. Stalin, fighting on the Eastern Front, is furious. He'd been promised a second front in the West. Instead, he's still facing the bulk of the German army alone. But here's where it gets worse. Because a failed D-Day doesn't just mean a setback. It means the entire Allied strategy collapses. The Allies don't have unlimited resources. They've just lost thousands of landing craft, hundreds of ships, tens of thousands of trained soldiers. Equipment that took years to build, gone in 4 days. They can't just try again next month. It would take at least a year, maybe 2, to rebuild the invasion force. And by then, the strategic situation has changed dramatically. Move forces from the west to the east. The divisions he kept in France can now reinforce the Eastern Front against the Soviets. Summer 1944. Instead of Germany fighting a two-front war, they're now fully focused on the east. The Soviet offensive that summer, which in our timeline pushed deep into Poland, now stalls. German reinforcements stabilize the line. The war in the east, which was heading toward German collapse, suddenly becomes a stalemate. Now he's got time to produce thousands of them. London gets hit daily. Southern England becomes uninhabitable. And the really terrifying stuff. The Nazi jet fighters, the Me-262, which were just starting production when Germany fell. Now they're rolling off assembly lines. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe has air superiority over Europe again. The Nazi nuclear program, which in our timeline never got far. Now, with the war dragging on, with German scientists not fleeing or being captured, they're getting closer. Not close enough to build a bomb by 1945, but maybe by 1946 or 47. Spring 1945. In our timeline, this is when Germany surrenders. The war in Europe ends. But in this timeline, the war's still going. The Soviets are stuck in Poland. The Americans and British are planning another invasion, but they're terrified. The first one failed catastrophically. What if this one does too? Political pressure is mounting. In America, people are asking, why are we still fighting in Europe? How many more boys have to die? In Britain, Churchill's facing a no-confidence vote. The failed invasion was his plan. His failure. Stalin, meanwhile, is getting desperate. He's been fighting Germany alone for 4 years now. His losses are astronomical. He starts putting out peace feelers. What if we just partition Europe? Germany keeps France, we keep Poland, everyone goes home? This is Hitler's dream scenario. The alliance falls apart. The Soviets and Western allies start negotiating separately. Hitler plays them against each other. By late 1945, exhausted, bleeding resources, the allies accept a negotiated peace. Germany keeps France, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Norway. The Nazis stay in power. The Holocaust continues. 6 million Jews died in our timeline. In this one, the number's worse. Much worse. Because the camps kept operating longer. The war ends not with liberation but with compromise. No post-war American dominance. No NATO. No European Union. That's the nightmare scenario. And here's what makes it terrifying. It was absolutely possible. His instincts told him Normandy made more sense. But his own intelligence kept confirming the lie. The fake radio traffic. The rubber tanks. Patton's public appearances. Every report said, massive army at Calais. And Hitler, for once in his paranoid life, believed the intelligence instead of his gut. If he'd been slightly more paranoid about the one thing that actually mattered. D-Day fails. The war drags on. Millions more die. And human history goes down a completely different, much darker path. That's how close we came. That's how much hung on Hitler believing a lie about rubber tanks and a fake army. Operation Fortitude, the deception plan, wasn't just clever. It was civilization saving. Because without it, without Hitler keeping his forces at Calais, the Normandy invasion probably fails. And if Normandy fails, Nazi Germany survives. Think about that. The entire world you know, the freedom you have, the fact that democracy won World War II, it all came down to inflatable tanks and Hitler believing in Patton. Sometimes the difference between victory and catastrophe is thinner than you think. Sometimes it's just one paranoid dictator making one correct guess instead of one wrong one. We got lucky. Incredibly, impossibly lucky. Because if Hitler hadn't fallen for the lie, we'd be living in a very different world right now. And not a better one.